Hello again. Now today I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story that's already somewhere among this number of videos and things, but I'm going to try to tell you it a different way. It's going to be ad-lib, no script, no nothing. This is how I remember the story, which is from about 53 years ago, about 1972. Maybe 52 years. We were living at New Bolingbroke, just north of Boston in Lincolnshire, and I'd just left Firestone. I'd worked for Firestone for several years as a general line salesman. It was a good life. It was the first time I'd had an amazing, regular income, a good wage, a company car, expense account. They even paid for me to get the car washed. It was the golden days of life in England, late 1960s, early 1970s, before things started getting difficult. So I decided Firestone was coming to an end. The Americans had come and they decided that their management was better than the English, although the English had run the Firestone company in the UK since about 1935, very successfully. 2 wonderful factories, one brand new one in North Wales. Anyway, the Americans took over and very briefly they destroyed it, and it soon came to an end, and I could see the writing on the wall. So Ruth and I started our own business. We'd tried, while we were living in Boston, we'd started ECYB Transport, East Coast Yachts and Boats. Boats were our passion, sailing. And anyway, I'd had a long talk to Fred, my boss at Firestone, and we decided that the time wasn't quite right, and so we'd shelved the idea. Anyway, about 1972, I left Firestone and we started ECYB Transport. We had a lot of ramshackle lorries. We did complaint tyre collections. That was the nucleus of it, because it's something I knew about. Tyres had been my life for years. So alongside this, we had some general transport. We looked around for work to fill in the days when we weren't carrying tyres, and I'd got this lorry called WONDERBUN, which you can read about in another story. WONDERBUN was a 12-ton, it's an HGV, a 12-ton box lorry, which we'd bought second-hand from one of our neighbours, Herbert Epton, who had a contact with the Wonderloaf bakery in Grimsby. And WONDERBUN was a bread delivery lorry, a big one. It had a big box body, 24 feet long, steel floor, tail lift. It had a tail lift, amazing, And we started looking for work using a pallet truck. We've got a pallet truck from our neighbours Rundles, the engineering firm where we did work for from time to time. And so we started palletised transport in 1973. Now, this is, the big thing nowadays in the 2020s. Lorries deliver pallets, and you can send a pallet from here to there by using different lorries and things, and it gets delivered as a pallet. So we just took full loads on pallets, and that was what we were looking for. So this particular day we'd got a load of potatoes to go to Brighton Market, Brighton on the south coast of England. It had to leave our premises at about 11 o'clock-ish, I suppose, to take it steady down to Brighton to be there for when the market opened at round about 4 a.m, I would think. A produce market. And because we hadn't got tachographs in those days, the regulations were a little bit more lenient, and we had driver's hours regulations, and you had a logbook. The logbook stayed with the lorry, and whoever drove it filled in the logbook. And so I couldn't really push my hours any longer. I'd loaded this lorry and I hadn't got the hours to deliver the load, so I found a lorry driver who wanted some part-time work. This time it was a lady. not so young. She lived locally. She'd got an HGV licence, I think, with the aim of providing herself with an income, you know, in middle age. She was pretty competent. So she was engaged to take this lorry to Brighton. Wonderbun wasn't a very posh lorry. It was very second-hand. We hadn't even painted it. We'd painted out the Wonderbun logo, but otherwise it was orange and white, which was Wonderbun paintwork. And it was loaded with potatoes, had about 10 tonnes. Oh yes, had about 10 tonnes on board. And it was a 12-tonne lorry. Had a payload of about 7 or 8 tonnes, I suppose. But anyway, it had 10 tonnes of tates on board, and off she went. So about just before midnight, I got a phone call, got me out of bed. The lorry had stopped in Boston, only just down the road, I don't know, 12, 14 miles away. It stopped and wouldn't go. So I gathered some bits up, tools, and Ruth had a Renault Catrel, a 4L, 1960s. It was a Mark I Renault Catrel, 3-speed gearbox. Wonderful thing they were, you know. They was like driving a thing on rails. I'll tell you more about that later, because when I was at the Standard in the 1960s, I helped to do the initial publicity locally for when the Catrel was launched. That's another story. So off I went eventually with a box of tools and bits and spares, and up to Boston. Found the lorry outside the fish and chip shop on Horncastle Road. She'd actually managed to get some fish and chips just before they shut. So I pulled up and had a quick look, and I found quite quickly the problem was just a broken spring on the accelerator, on the injector pump. The Wonderbun was an Austin FJK with an inclined engine. I don't know, it was about 8 litres, I suppose, 6-cylinder. And the injector pump was right on the top. So the engine was in the cab. It was one seat either side of the engine, and the engine access was very easy. So soon had the top off, found the problem, replaced the spring, and off she went. By that time it was about 1:45, I think, maybe a bit later. And so I packed up my tools and beetled off back home down Horncastle Road towards New Bolingbroke, which is just about 10 miles north of Boston. And to get there you have to drive down the side of some very big land drains. And Lincolnshire land drains, they're like big rivers, but Lincolnshire's flat and water doesn't flow, it's pumped out. So where these big land drains arrive against the sea walls, then there's some big pumping stations, and they pump the water out into the sea. It's drainage, land drainage, because most of the land in Lincolnshire is below the level of the sea, you see. Just like Holland. So some of these drains are pretty big, pretty beefy. They're fed by smaller drains and dikes by the side of the fields and things like that. And this particular one was about 60 feet, 70 feet across, maybe 100 feet at the top. It was about 50 feet across at water level and dead straight, all the way down from a set of lock gates just north of Boston, right down to Frithville, which was almost halfway home. So as I approached this junction, I got past the lock gates at Cowbridge, they call it. Then I had a choice of either going to the left, which was straight on, and down a bit of a bumpy road alongside this drain until I got to Frithville, or I could cross the other side, cross over a bridge near the lock gates, and go down a posh road, you know, a nice big dual carriageway, a nice big dual road, you know, there and back sort of thing, normal sized, down to Frithville. So I chose the minor road. It was quicker, the bumpy bit, straight on, No messing about, no crossing over or anything like that. It was the one I normally used. And as I was proceeding down there, pootling along in the Catrell, then I saw some lights come behind me. And they were coming pretty quick. I thought, blimey, you know, this isn't a good road for travelling fast. So I kept my eyes in the mirror. And as I was approaching Frithville, then the dyke I was running alongside is joined by another one coming in from the left. And these two dykes join. There's the straight one. There's the straight one. This other one comes in like that. And the road turns sharp. Where are we? The road turns sharp left. This camera's in reverse. And so if you don't turn sharp left, where this dyke, this big drain joins the other big drain, then you end up in the drain, all right? There's no barriers or anything. It's just a big steep bank and you go splash. So I thought, well, I don't know what's coming behind me, but it's catching me pretty quick. So I thought, well, I'll just see how good these people behind me know the local roads. So I didn't press the brake pedals or anything, because the Catrell, you can turn it, you can maximum speed, you can just steer around corners and it'll go just on rails. It's an incredible thing. So at the bottom of this road, as I joined this dyke, this big drain ahead of me, I turned left sharp, 90 degrees. And it was about another half a mile up to the bridge where I had to turn right and go over this second drain and join the 7 miles straight, which is a road all the way down to New Bolingbroke. It goes to Revesby. From Frithville to Revesby, it's 7 miles without a kink in it, all the way down. It's a fen road. It's not level. The fens are bumpy and uneven because the ground is moving silt. Anyway, I made it to the bridge and I was pootling along down the 7 mile straight, and suddenly a blue light appeared behind me, you know, a blue flashing light. By that time it was after 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 a.m. And so, so it probably means me to slow down. So I slowed down and I stopped. So this policeman got out the car and he said, I wound the window down and he said, well, no, you had to push it. The Catrell's got a sliding window at the side. And he said, you know these roads quite well, sir, don't you? I said, yes, I do quite well. I live just down here. He said, we've been watching you. I said, all right. He said, yes, you were at Boston repairing a lorry. I said, yeah, it was my lorry. I said, it's off to Brighton and it had a broken, had a cellular spring, so I'm going back to bed now. So they said, well, you took that corner down the bottom there pretty sharp, didn't you? I said, well, yes. I saw these lights behind me. And I thought, God, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't know who's behind you. You know, is it somebody with evil intent? So I thought, well, I'll just keep going, you see. So I didn't press the brakes or anything. And I'm here, you know. So, yes, well, it was us behind you, he said. And you nearly had us in that dyke. Well, drain. He said, because we suddenly found ourselves with this enormous big drain in front of us and the road belted off to the left. So we made it, but no thanks to you. I said, well, I'm sorry about that, but it's I didn't know who you were. So they just listened to my story and then they turned round and went home. So and I continued down the 7 mile straight to New Bolingbroke and went to bed. And the lady, she got a friend with her for a bit of company for the a lady friend. The lady driver, and they appeared back in the morning, I think about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock maybe, in the yard. The journey being uneventful, they got the potatoes delivered, and that was it. So an interesting story, all quite true. But you see, you don't know, do you, who's behind you at 2 o'clock in the morning? It could be somebody intent on evil doing, couldn't it? I didn't know it's a police car. Anyway, the chaps in the car were fairly new to the area, you see, and they didn't know about this little narrow road. And the fact that at the end, you had to turn stunt left or else you ended up in the water. So I thought it was quite amusing, really. I couldn't stop smirking a bit when they expressed their concern that they thought it was me that had led them on and nearly made them dike their car. So that was an interesting story, I thought. So there we are. It's WONDERBUN and the lady driver, and it ended up with this incident with the police. So it's just what life was like in the 1970s, you know. Hope you enjoyed that. Now, if you like it, then how about giving us a like and subscribing to the channel? It helps it to grow. It doesn't cost you anything. It's good for us, though. It makes YouTube think that, you know, we've got people who are interested in what we're doing. So please subscribe and like and share with your friends. And until the next time, thank you for being with us. Cheerio.